What would you do if your HOA president showed up to your burning house before the roof even collapsed? I never thought I'd be the guy watching his own roof go up in flames while the HOA stood there blaming me like they had it all figured out before the firefighters even rolled up. But the clues started falling into place fast, like they'd been waiting for me to notice. Midnight Water drops a fake inspector blueprints running right across my land stuff that doesn't make sense till you step back and connect the dots. The moment I opened that fireproof box, it hit me. They never thought I'd survive long enough to tell the truth. The first thing I remember is the sound. Not the sirens, not the shouts, but the sharp crack of glass windows blowing out one by one like someone swinging a hammer at every memory I'd nailed into those walls. Then the heat, a thick, wrong heat, even from where I stood at the mouth of my gravel drive, boots planted in dust, glowing orange from the reflection. My cabin up on Ridgewater Hill was burning to the ground. Flames poured out of the roof, licking into the Montana sky like something alive. Smoke climbed above the pines, dragging sparks into the wind. Fire trucks crowded the slope, red and white lights flickering off the trunks. Hoses snaked across the dirt, spraying water that turned to steam the second it hit the siding. The air tasted like burned resin and wet ash. "Mr. Cole," the voice cut through it all, too crisp for a night like this. I didn't turn right away. I watched a firefighter drag a line across my front steps, boots pounding boards my wife and I had sanded and stained until they shone. Those boards were black now, edges curling. "Remy." I looked. Bethany Reed, president of the Ridgewater Lakefront Association, stood under the wash of the engine lights like she was stepping up to a podium. Bright coral jacket hair, yanked back leather folio clamped to her side phone, glowing in her free hand. Out of everyone up on this ridge, she was the last person I wanted to see tonight. "Bethany," I croaked through the smoke. "You here to help carry hoses?" She didn't even pretend to laugh. Just pressed her mouth into that tight line I'd seen at too many HOA meetings. "I'm here because this affects the whole community," she said. "Flames are visible from the south cul-de-sac. We've had half a dozen calls already. Frankly, Remy, there are questions." Ash and embers drifted around her. What kind of questions? I asked. She looked past me at the cabin. About how this started. About why there were no proper fire breaks up here. About whether your modifications might have created a hazard. There it was. Something in my chest burned hotter than the fire chewing through my roof. "Hazard," I repeated. "This place has been here longer than half your subdivision." She tilted her head. "We both know that's not accurate, Remy. You've been, how should I put it, stubborn about complying with our lakefront safety standards. Unauthorized fencing, non-compliant vegetation, that old generator." "Ma'am." Sheriff Marcus Hale stepped between us, boots crunching on gravel ash, dusting the brim of his hat. "Now's not the time," he said. "Let the fire crews work." Bethany gave him a quick smile. "Of course, Sheriff. I'm only trying to ensure everyone's safety. If this was accidental, we need to know. And if it wasn't..." She let the thought hang in the smoke. I'd seen the way she looked at my ridge, the old barn, the dam, that strip of rocky slope the developers couldn't touch because my deed said otherwise. She didn't just like order, she liked ownership. "You think I burned my own place down?" Her gaze snapped back. "I think it would be irresponsible not to consider all possibilities. The association has noted multiple violations on your property this year. Concerns about fuel storage. That pile of old lumber by the barn." "The barn that's also on fire," I said. "Funny how that works." Something flickered in her eyes. She tapped her folio. "Ridgewater's bylaws are very clear about combustible materials within 50 feet of any structure. I sent you 3 notices, Remy. You never responded." I had responded not to her but to the county fire marshal with inspection reports and photos and my own stamped assessment. 20 years as a dam engineer teaches you how to quantify risk. They'd cleared me in writing. Bethany just hadn't liked their answer. A shout went up. "Roof's going!" The cabin groaned, flames bursting higher, reflecting in Bethany's eyes. "This is exactly what we've been afraid of," she said, almost triumphant. "One spark up here and the whole ridge is at risk. If this spreads down to the lakefront, it isn't." I cut in. "Wind's taking it north. You can see that same as me." She ignored me, turned to Marcus. "Sheriff, the board will need a full investigation. We have liability to consider. If Mr. Cole's negligence caused this, the association will have no choice but to pursue legal action." Marcus's tone sharpened. "Not now. Fires don't just appear on cool nights with no lightning, no wind. I'd walk that property at dusk, check the dam, listen to the creek spill into the pond, watch the lake catch the last light. Every gate latched, every pump reading normal, too normal in hindsight. I watched my front door collapse, inward sparks shooting up. Somewhere under that floor was a fireproof steel box bolted to the concrete holding documents and drives I prayed were still there. And scattered around the property in places Bethany called paranoid were motion-triggered cameras. Bethany stepped closer, lowered her voice. "For what it's worth," she said, "I'm glad you weren't inside. This could have been so much worse for everyone." "For everyone," I echoed. She gave me a long look, then walked back toward the line of SUVs. Her taillights washed over the old sign on my gatepost, Coal Ranch Established. 1953. Marcus watched her go. "You all right, Remy?" "No," I said, "but I'm standing." He nodded. "State fire investigator will be up here at first light. We'll see what they make of it." "They'll find what they're supposed to find," I murmured. Marcus frowned. "What's that mean?" I watched the fire creep along the siding. Not wild, not random paths in it, energy going where someone wanted it to go. "It means this wasn't an accident," I said, "and I know who's going to be first in line to point a finger when the report comes in." My gaze followed the glow of Bethany's taillights as they disappeared toward the lakefront gates. Behind me, my cabin cracked and crashed, inward sparks shooting up. One question burned hotter than the fire: if Bethany Reed was really so worried about community safety, why was she the first one at my fire? Accusations ready before the roof even finished collapsing. 6 months earlier, the ridge was silent, just the wind and the soft clink of my hammer on cedar. Back then, the world smelled like sawdust, not smoke. The fence I was repairing wasn't just a fence. It was the last project my wife and I designed together. A simple privacy rail, 6 feet hand-cut planks, stained dark to blend with the hillside. She wanted a quiet spot for coffee watching trout rise in the mornings. I'd just finished the final post when a car door slammed behind me. Too sharp for a ranch road. Wiped my palms on my jeans, turned. A silver SUV idled at the edge, chrome still shining. Bethany stepped out, bright jacket like she was here for a photo shoot. Behind her, a tall man in a neon vest, clipboard in hand, looked around like he was checking boxes. "Morning, Mr. Cole," Bethany said, walking toward me like she owned the path. "We received a report about an unapproved structure." I leaned on my hammer. "It's a fence, not a structure. It's 6'2", she shot back. The clipboard guy snapped the tape open. "Bylaw states max 6. "That bylaw doesn't apply," I said. "My land's older than your HOA. You can't govern what you don't own." Bethany lifted her chin. "We maintain standards around the lake. Views, uniformity, property values. I didn't say what I wanted to, that my wife's memory mattered more than any of those things. Instead, I pulled my laminated deed from my pocket. "This is my boundary," I said, handing it over. She barely glanced before giving it back. "The association has concerns," she said, waving toward the slope. "Several residents have issues with your improvements." "You mean the fence my wife designed?" I asked. Something flickered in her expression, but it passed. "We simply want compliance, Remy. Everyone else on the lake follows the rules." I looked out at the water. New houses had gone up, all glass rails and metal roofs belonging to people who didn't stay long enough to watch the seasons turn. They wanted my ridge because they couldn't build higher than the water line. Funny, I didn't remember signing anything about Ridgewater Lakefront when we bought this place. "Perhaps you didn't look carefully," she said. "The association's expanding. We have long-term plans to elevate this community," clipboard guy whispered. "Ma'am, should I mark it for removal?" "No," I said before she could. "You're on my land. That tape comes down." Bethany held up her manicured hand. "You can't threaten HOA personnel. I didn't threaten anyone. I told him not to trespass." The ridge went quiet. A hawk circled overhead. "You'll receive a formal notice," Bethany said. Failing to respond could mean escalating fines. She turned heels, crunching on the rock, but called back, "This fence interferes with community planning and it doesn't fit the aesthetic we're building." Clipboard guy shrugged, muttered, "I just get paid to measure things." They left me alone with the fence hands on the rail. My wife traced the week before the flood took her. The wind moved through the cedars, again the lake below. Something wasn't right. My deed was ironclad. The county had no problem. And yet Bethany had shown up with paperwork and a fake inspector trying to intimidate me into tearing down the only thing I'd built since I lost her. The tape measure they'd dropped had a stamp on the side, Ridgewater Lakefront Expansion Project. They didn't care about aesthetics, they wanted my land. A week later, a glossy envelope from Ridgewater HOA showed up in my mailbox so thick it bent the flap. 3 violations: unapproved boat shed. I didn't have a boat shed. Too many Cattle Ridge properties outside HOA authority, and a non-aesthetic rose garden. My wife's roses. The ones she planted to catch the sunrise. By the 3rd week, the letters came daily: illegal compost, unsafe railing, unauthorized vegetation. All sharp corners and corporate fonts ending with failure to respond may result in escalating fines and legal action. I didn't throw them away. I stacked them neat as bricks, photographed every one, logged dates and times. Old engineer habits die hard. Then came the knock. Sheriff Marcus' folder thick enough to split a binder. "I've got complaints here," he said. "All from the HOA. How many? 23. In 19 days. He wasn't there to harass, he was just tired. They're loud, organized, got money, but I haven't forgotten who was here first." "There's talk," Marcus said. "Developers poking around the lakefront. HOA board asking about expansion zoning property availability. They think they can buy or condemn the ridge if they can make it look unsafe." I stared at the bluebird on my fence, the sun sliding behind the ridge. "This isn't about compliance." "No," Marcus said. "It's not. Tell me what you need." "Cooperation. Patience. I'm not here to hurt you, but I've got to check the boxes." "You do what you have to," I said. "I'll keep doing what I'm doing, documenting everything." He nodded. Smart man. That night, sorting the newest violation letters, something shifted. This wasn't random harassment or rule enforcement, it was strategy. A pattern to pressure me until I gave up what they really wanted: my land. And if they'd bury me in paperwork, what else would they do? The answer came on a night too still for comfort. A storm flirted with the ridge. By midnight, wind whipped the pines. I checked the dam habit more than worry, but something felt off. The lake surface had dropped just an inch or two, but enough. I knew that water line like my own hands. Water trickled where it shouldn't. A metallic creak from the dam's intake valves behind a locked gate I'd checked earlier. Fresh tire tracks in the mud straight to my lower gate. Lock-hanging crooked latch scraped clean. Someone forced it quietly. Rain cracked overhead. The intake valve was halfway open, boot prints in the mud, one small Bethany size, the other heavier. If they'd opened it all the way, the sudden surge could have damaged county pipes. Flooded trails made my land look unsafe. I shut the valve, checked the gauges. That's when I noticed the red blink my security camera. The footage showed 2 figures, one in HOA gear, one in a contractor vest, sneaking down the private HOA road. Later, the smaller one, Bethany, gestured, agitated, then left. 5 minutes later, the storm knocked the camera offline. Next morning, Bethany filed a formal safety complaint against my water infrastructure. Timestamp 4:17 a.m. It wasn't greed, it was strategy, a setup accident by design. I went to Walt Henderson, the old-timer with stories older than the HOA itself. I laid it all out: the lowered water line, the sabotage, the complaint. Walt just shook his head, jaw working his pipe. "They've done it before," he muttered. "Drove the Davis family out, fined the Cortezes till they left. Target folks who can't fight back, push them till they break. Now it's you, because you've got the ridge. And that's what they want." He handed me an envelope, old letters, emails, patterns of harassment. "Been collecting these. You're on their radar now. They won't like you asking questions." As if on cue, an HOA truck rolled by, routine inspection. They'd never inspected up here in 40 years. The next day, urgent notice, emergency inspection, mandatory access. A man with spotless boots, clipboard in hand, marched straight onto my property, ignoring my deed, taking dramatic photos of every board and barn. "Who authorizes you?" "The Ridgewater Lakefront Association. President Reed specifically." "Got it all on video," I told him. That afternoon, Sarah Mitchell showed up, lawyer and friend, with blueprints, emails, and HOA financial ledgers. "They've been planning this for years, Remy. Your land is the last piece. If they can't get safety clearance, they proceed with acquisition." She slid over a memo. Bethany's own words. "If Coles Ridge cannot pass safety review, we proceed with planned acquisition." And the kicker, the inspector wasn't even licensed, paid directly from HOA discretionary funds. Fraud, plain and simple. We set a trap. Let them think I wasn't watching. Let them tie the rope around themselves. Sarah filed public records requests, found more discrepancies, more evidence of a coordinated plan. By the night my cabin burned, I knew the fire was no accident. The footage from my fireproof box confirmed it. Bethany and a contractor pouring accelerant, rigging the generator, walking away before the blaze started. Bethany's insurance claim had been filed 2 weeks before the fire, predicting potential damage from a projected fire event. Not an accident, a setup. When the sheriff called, I told him, "You need to come up here. I have footage, the kind you bring a warrant for." Rain hissed against the hot debris. My wife's roses glowing in the firelight untouched. A week later, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Sarah laid out the evidence, footage, memos, insurance forms. The judge's brow furrowed deeper with every fact. Bethany protested, blaming me, blaming my non-compliance, but Sarah held up the fire investigator's report, professionally placed accelerants, not an accident. The judge ordered a full criminal investigation, suspended all HOA powers, and asked Bethany if she had anything to add. She didn't. The silence said more than any defense she could have offered. Soon after state investigators arrived, board members went pale. Bethany's hands shook as she unlocked the office. That night, under blue and red lights, she was led away, expression unreadable, her story finally unraveling. I didn't watch the arrest. There's no satisfaction in handcuffs. Instead, I stood by the lake, dipped my fingers in the cold water, and whispered to the night, "We'll rebuild it right this time." The ridge was mine again. A grant for fire victims' restitution from the HOA and volunteers from the community helped me rebuild. By spring, the marina expansion was canceled. The HOA dissolved. On the day we raised the new cabin's final beam, the sunrise painted the water gold, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. "You can burn a house," I said quietly, "but you can't burn the truth." If you've ever stood your ground against someone who thought they could push you off your land, drop a yes in the comments or just leave a justice if you know what it's like to fight for what's right. Stories like this remind us truth may bend, but it never breaks. And if you want to ride along for the next showdown, I'd be glad to have you here.